gonna stay off video. She can still share and do all of that.
All right, you're officially live streaming.
Great. Dina, are you gonna do roll call or just confirming we have
Yes, ma'am, I sure can. Good morning, everyone. My apologies for not being able to have on my camera. I'm having technical difficulties with that part of it this morning, but it's good to see everyone. So I'll go ahead and our meeting, it's 9:06 a.m. and I'll go ahead and get our roll call started. Ms. Liza McFadden,
here?
Mr. Scott Fennell,
I'm here.
Scott Ross, Patrick Scott, Ms. Sika Green,
Here.
Mr. John Grayson.
I'm here.
You have a quorum, and I will share that Mr. Patrick Scott did let me know that he might be able to potentially join in the last 30 minutes. He was having to work around some of his previously scheduled meetings.
Okay, well, I can't imagine this taking that long, given this responses, but we will see. All right, Dina, keep me honest because I'm not looking at the agenda, but are we going right into just kind of talking about the RFI's responses that we got?
Well, at this point, if we can call for approval of the agenda.
Oh, okay, thanks. Approval of the agenda. Could I ask John or Scott or?
Do we need a motion? I move acceptance of the agenda.
Thanks, John.
I'll second if we need it.
Thanks, Scott. All right, I'm gonna assume we're all approved. And okay, Dina, and then from there.
Yep, and I am not aware of any public comment. So
Okay.
at this point, we can move right on into review of the RFI responses.
Okay. So we had two. We had Dana Investment Advisors, which was somewhat of a more traditional advisory program. I'll kind of walk through sort of, my quick takeaways on it. They are a firm based outside of Florida. They have very, they've had one of the things you look for in advisors is a staff that's been there a long time. I was very impressed that most of the staff members had been there over 10 years in all of their positions. That really shows, quality team that has been around for a long time, kind of knows this world well. They were willing to meet, 1 to 4 times a year. They talked about their expertise, not only with bonds, with a variety of different instruments. They did give several organizations in Florida that they work with, including the town of Malabar, Orange Park, and Gasparilla Bridge, as potentials to have a conversation with. And they had a fairly large staff that they were going to put in place potentially to work with the organization. I did find it interesting that they benchmarked themselves against the Treasury Index, and that the sample portfolio holding they gave us was primarily cash and Treasury bonds, which would be something you could purchase on your own. However, one of the reasons we're going through this process is, I've talked to lawyers in the past, and, it is really best practice to have a third party doing this type of work for you, so that we've got another set of eyes kind of overseeing it. So that's my high level overview on Dana. Did anybody want to add anything else in that they noted from their review?
I do have questions because I'm not in this financial space, like, at all. And I did not do, I didn't look up what BPS means, but so under the fee.
Okay, I can explain that. That's a basis points.
Okay.
So Yeah, that's just and sometimes it's BP and sometimes it's BPS in the way that it's defined.
So how do you equate, so when they're saying up to the first 5 million, 25 basis points, so whatever the basis point is, that's times the 25,
0.025.
got it?
The cost, yeah. Which is actually, that's a fairly, very inexpensive fee, actually. But you are looking at a return on investment that's going to be pretty low. So I think that's why you're seeing a lower fee.
Yeah, that struck me a little bit, Liza. I mean, it is a reasonable rate, but for just purchasing treasuries, there's no management really. I mean, there's some management and timing.
Right.
You know, if they're working on, you know, we want to stay fairly low on the, you know, time spectrum of the you know, lower 2-year treasuries versus, or 3-month treasuries versus longer, and making those decisions. But you know, you're paying for very little management on that.
Right. And a lot of staff too.
Yeah, and a lot of staff, and so that makes me wonder, and I get cynical sometimes. Like, is this a standard, you know, proposal that they send out, that they just have like little, almost like a listserv where little things change and put your name in here, your name in there? Because a lot of the proposals seem to, and I know it's not a proposal, it's just an RFI, but with this type of advisement services, you know, are they really, you know, they talk about their high-end clientele, and, you know, they kept repeating high net worth investors and institutional investors. I guess we fall in the institutional realm, but you just wonder how much real management you're going to get. Or is it going to be, they're going to buy you some treasuries, they're going to let it sit, and they're going to charge you 25 basis points for it?
Yeah, that's why I was sort of like, boy, that's why I made the comment. You can kind of do this on your own if that's what you're going to
Right.
do. But
Right.
and I wondered if that sample. So at first I thought, okay, the sample maybe just doesn't include everything they would do. But then when they said their only benchmark that they used was the Treasury Index, that's where I got a red flag, because I would have thought there would be other indexes if they were thinking about other things they were going to invest in.
Yeah.
John,
And then,
go ahead.
no, sorry, I was just going to say that something else that stood out to me was they talked about their spread of what they have, and most of their spread seems to be, they have a lot of equity investments. When they, you know, their overall practice, they do a lot of equity work. And, you know, for a lot of clients, I'm sure if you're a pension fund or something, that'd be something you'd be interested in. But again, it kind of struck me as they're there. And yeah, if you don't have a better option, 25 basis points for them to take over the management, the buying and selling, tracking of the treasuries, making sure that we're not sitting on or getting rid of treasuries that are, you know, unrealized losses if the rate's going to change, that kind of stuff. Maybe that's worth it. But, you know, it felt like we're a pretty large firm. We do a lot of work. We got a lot of talent. We can fit you in like we do some of these smaller towns, and we give you a report at the beginning of each month to see how your treasuries are doing. That's kind of what it felt like to me when I read through it, which is what I think is out there for besides the other one, which we'll talk about. You know, I think that's what we're going to get if we go out with our proposals. Is anyone that's going to respond, it's probably very similar to this. Like, we're not going to do a lot of work for you, but it's not going to cost you a lot, but we'll take care of it. You'll make some money.
Right. And you'll get the legal covered.
You get the legal coverage. Yeah.
John, what were your thoughts?
I'm really not into this. I've never really looked at an advisory contract or proposal, so I really didn't have any. But listening to Scott, for somebody to buy treasuries and charge 25 basis points on quite a bit of money, looks like the fee would be, although the percentage is low, it's going to be large for just buying and selling treasuries. So I just did it at 5 million. It was $25,000. So
you could hire a person. I mean, yeah, you don't get the legal coverage, but you could hire someone with a CFA to come in and work at the Children's Services Council for less than that to buy treasuries.
Mm-hmm.
You can't steal
Okay.
money, but
I think we all had the same reaction, but there's a reason I started with this one.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think this is not, not surprising to me that this is what we got from my conversations with a lot of the firms, because they feel strongly they don't want to deal with equity on government funds, which we understand. Okay, so Dina, can you switch over to Florida class?
Yes, ma'am. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up.
So Florida class, and I'll start with sort of my overview, and I'm not looking at any notes as I do these, so if I skip things, forgive me. They operate under different names in a number of southern states and in California. In Florida, they do have an advisory board that is specific to what they do in Florida. They're very well known in Florida, a very large pool that is operates under the Florida statutes. And they do specialize in government entities and sort of some of the pillars that we discussed previously of liquidity and safety and so forth. I know that we all probably know a number of people on their board because they've got Jim Cook from the city, and some folks may know some of these other folks that are throughout Florida, pretty well-known board of directors. And their breakdown and what they do a lot of special district work, which is kind of unusual. So that to me is, was kind of interesting. I mean, that's about 16% of their work. And when you look at, if you can go down, they do mix it up. Go back a little bit. They do mix up the portfolio just a little bit more. So you've got, your U.S. Treasuries that we've talked about, but they've got some commercial paper, money market in there, cash, corporate notes. So, and they've got a very stable portfolio process. Okay, keep going down. And here's their performance metrics. Now, when I looked at the annualized performance of 1 year at 0.78, that is probably not that different than if you were to invest in treasuries, right? So I think you're going to see a little bit of an increase, but probably not a huge, but you do have a more diversified portfolio and AAA rating, which is great. There's a copy of what their yields are in their assets that have been growing year over year. So you see that they've got, just in Florida alone, over $6 billion that they're monitoring. And of course, when you can get that big, that helps you. And let's see, same day liquidity, which obviously that's helpful to us. Keep going. I don't know that any of this is, unlimited transactions, which is great. And to give a sample of what you might earn. Those are the states we talked about, primarily the South and California, some of them up in the Union area. And then that I thought now they did not put a lot of information on Matthew Tite or Renee O'Day. That's their two key folks. We'd obviously want to look into that a little bit more. They're both from the 407. Looks like they're based out of the Orlando area market. And I think that's kind of the overview. So thoughts? It's obviously a lot of folks are investing in them.
Yeah, I'll
So-
jump in and just
Well,
want,
Scott,
go ahead.
before you do, I do, because I want to be sure that we're being transparent. And so for full disclosure, when I first started working with CSC, maybe it was February or March of 22, I met with Matthew Tite and he just kind of went through this information on FL class. And so I wanted that to be on the record, just so that the public had full transparency and know that I had met with him. I do have a similar presentation that he gave me at that point. So I'm a little more familiar with FL class than I would be with any other possible respondent. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Well, and Seek, I was going to do the same thing. So I,
Okay.
I've met with public trust advisors, Matt and his brother Todd, and we actually have, the state of Florida has quite a bit of money invested with public trust advisors and asset-backed securities. So not really the type of things we'd be investing in, but so I know Matt very well. But yeah, I'm biased in both ways. When you know somebody, you know their goods and their bad. So, but the one thing I don't remember from talking about the FL class, because we are not, the state's not invested in FL class. Essentially, what they do, we do internally with our own internal managers. So it didn't make sense for us to pay them, but I can't remember what their fee schedule was, and I could not find it. I looked twice. It was last night, but I couldn't find it in the proposal. So that'd be something that and it's not required for an RFI. I would imagine when we get down to actually procuring something, that's when we can discuss that. But I remember it being fairly reasonable, but I don't know what the number was. But what they do is obviously geared exactly towards what we're looking for. The board is run by people that have their money in it. And so that's always something that's very positive. You feel comfortable that, the people making decisions aren't worried about profits, except for the fact that they're worried about their own money. They're not worried about their personal money. They're worried about the organization's money. And so, which I guess if it's pension related, it might be very important to them too. But anyways, it's a good fund. It's really highly rated. They do mix up. And I will say on the 1 year return, the fact that they're not negative is really good. Most 1 years in the bond fixed asset market has been terrible. 2022 was the worst year for bond markets. They probably kept a lot of their money short, which is good. Which was just probably what they just operate under, but that's why they benefited from that. They didn't have a lot of long duration bonds because that's where everyone took a complete bath, including us. So anyways, great. I think it's a great option. Again, biased, met with them before, know the organization. They do a good job. And actually Matt and I think I'm saying his name right, Todd Tite, they were part of an organization, used to be one of our long duration portfolio managers back before they started or went to Florida Public Trust Advisors. So they've got a long history in Florida, done a lot of investing for state of Florida assets. So good long track record with them.
Scott, I had a question when I was looking at it because they are pretty unique. Do you consider this a potential sole source because they're so different, or would you say no, this needs to be a traditional RFP?
Well, I am not a procurement expert, a little caveat there, but I think because it's essentially fixed asset investing and it's going to be based on returns and fees, I would think the safer bet is to go to a procurement.
Yeah.
I personally would do a negotiation if you are, I don't know if special districts are allowed to do ITNs. I don't know if they follow state procurement law, but that would be the way I would go, because then you can have conversations. If sometimes there's misunderstandings with what's put down as opposed to just a straight proposal. The state of Florida doesn't have to go through procurement for investments. We are exempt for investment vehicles and investment providers.
Well, that's interesting.
We go through a process, but we don't follow state procurement law. So if when we selected public trust advisors to do some asset-backed security management, we didn't go through an entire process. We're trying to get into that type of security. So we just kind of formed a partnership with them to help us start learning how to do that. So we're lucky that way. I don't know if Leon County Children's Services Council would be able to follow the state's law that way, but
Well, I'm sorry, Liza.
No, I was gonna say, Sika, that might be a good question to ask our legal team.
Yeah, so our legal team, we have one of the top procurement lawyers, if you will, on our legal team. So we will ask that. My question was going to be if because of the uniqueness, and I will be honest, I thought this back when I first was introduced to FL class, if because of the uniqueness, we could do a sole source. So it's interesting that you brought that up, Liza. And so we will check with Fred Springer, who's with BMO and does our procurements. I will tell you that because I had the previous knowledge and looking through their proposal, it was much easier for me to follow and understand exactly, what they were saying, what they would do, how they would invest, and all of that. I do take comfort in knowing that that the board is Florida, those are Florida governmental officials for all intents and purposes, and that it's a Florida specific fund. So there's a comfort in that. The same day liquidity, all of that made sense to me. And I think the last thing was that, so to say it in layman's terms, I did not feel any angst because you can invest as little or as much. And so it wasn't a situation where, Liza, when we were meeting and talking about investments and you were telling me that when we look at what we would be investing, it probably would be hard to get a larger investment firm because we're significantly under 10 million or so. So that brought me a little bit of comfort as well.
Mm-hmm. So Sika, I think based on what Scott said too, it might not be a question of just can we sole source, but do we actually have to go through a procurement process at all? Or can we enter negotiation?
I've made a note and we are going to reach out to Fred today.
Yeah, that's interesting, Scott. You don't happen to know what legislation that is, do
I knew
you?
you were gonna ask me that.
You were trying to find it, weren't you?
Yeah, let me try and see if I can find it, but it's in our treasury statute. So I mean, I'll find it and I'll send it to the group.
Yes.
Or I'll send it. Who should I send it to? Because I'll send
Yeah,
it.
send it to Sika.
Okay.
It would just make probably a little bit easier for the lawyers, and every minute we can spare of them not working on our stuff, that saves us money.
Yes, that's right.
And as we're moving along, Ms. McFadden, I will share that we got into the next part, which was next steps. And how do we move forward from here, which at this point, it looks like we're going to reach out to our legal counsel to get some additional information in regards to a procurement process if it's needed, or whether this would be an opportunity to be able to do a sole source. And with that, we've concluded the piece in regards to review of RFI responses and next steps.
Yeah, I would say in the category of preference, it would be, can we avoid procurement and go into negotiation? And I just want to kind of get everybody's feedback on this. Can we sole source given what we've learned and the conversations we've had with other groups? Or if we do it, I think the third would be the procurement recommendation would be an ITN if we move to procurement. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks, Dina. I just wanted to sort of put a pin in that. Good. All right. Anything else anybody wanted to note?
So from a process standpoint, just so that this group is aware, we will give the update on this last work group meeting at our April council meeting, because our next council meeting is this Thursday. In that process, we will be able to go through those next steps and even be able to update this group on what we find out, so that we'll have that information as well. And so with that, I am going to jump ahead to the next meeting date, because we could plan a meeting date before that next council meeting to come up with an official recommendation from the work group, from the information that we get from the next steps. Ms. McFadden.
Okay, Sika, and I'm wondering, just because I'm very cognizant of everybody's time, why don't you circle with me once you get back the feedback from the lawyers? Because based on what they say might really impact how much work this group has to do. If it's an ITN, it's going to be a very different level of work than if we can go move into the negotiation.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
And if you want, we can put a meeting on the calendar, but what we would need, what might be more important is for us to think through who the negotiation team would be.
Absolutely. So we would be more than happy to do that. We'll reach out and see if we can get a tentative date. We'll keep it tentative. And as we find this information out, we'll communicate that with you, Ms. McFadden, and then you can make the decision from there whether we need to move forward with that meeting or whether that turns into a negotiation type team meeting once we identify who we'd like to serve. And
Perfect.
I'm being forward thinking and hoping that we can go straight to negotiations. So yeah, so we will do that.
Oh, he just, Scott just got it?
I added it to chat, so everyone
Got
can
it.
see. And it's a open section, so I don't know how to reference that, but it's at the end, there's like section 1, subsections A through X, and then under that, there's just a paragraph before you get to subsection 2. I'm sorry, I said 1, it's subsection 2 of 1757.
I see. It's
and then
super
there's just a paragraph.
specific though to the chief financial officer.
It does say that,
It is,
yeah.
it is.
You know what,
Yeah.
Sika? Here's what I'm guessing. I bet you it's not addressed because you said we're the first Children's Services Council to do this. So
We-
likely, like the process may not even be addressed in our statute.
Well, we're not the first to do investments.
Okay.
Yeah, Miami does it, Broward does it, but they invest right around the same amounts that we were talking about investing. So we will get with them, but I also want to get with Fred because it could be that they were doing what they thought they had to do, not knowing that there could be a way to get around it. So let's do that investigation.
Great. All right. Dina, are we ready to adjourn or is there anything else we need to cover?
That was, unless we'll ask if any group members have any additional comments at this time.
Ma'am.
Okay. And with that, Ms. McFadden, we are ready to adjourn.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it and made good progress.